You're listening to From the Chair, and I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Join us each episode as we talk to athletic directors from across America. We're going to talk about topics like leadership, career development, issues of the day, and I can promise you we're going to have some fun along the way too. So sit back, listen in, and let's dive in. Let's go. All right, welcome to today's episode. My guest today is Mark Harlan, the athletic director at the University of Utah, the back-to-back Pac-12 football champions. Mark, how are you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mike. Great to have a chance to talk with you, but I'm doing great. Just got back from Pasadena. Didn't win the game, but just an incredible season we had. Very excited.
Very exciting for sure, man. You're in your fifth year there in Salt Lake City, and we're going to talk about a number of things today. But I do want to talk about, we've already alluded to the success in football the last couple of years. I want to talk about success in general. Then we're going to hone in on some specific sports questions related to some success you've had in your other sports, and then we'll decide where we go from there. But coming off the top, you follow a guy in Chris Hill who was there for, this sounds unbelievable to even say out loud in today's world, but 31 years as athletic director, and obviously very respected in our industry for a long time, and now you're in your fifth year, and some would say that perhaps the last 24 months have been the best years athletically speaking, maybe academically speaking, program growth speaking, in the history of the University of Utah. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that has as a result of. But first, let's talk about following a guy like Chris. You and I know that 31 years is a long time, and certainly you have to be doing a nice job to be at a place for that long. So I would assume you would say you came into a place that wasn't broken, but like every place needs to, have tweaks and turns and vision for the future. So if you wouldn't mind, let's just come off the top talking a little bit about following Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember in my opening press conference, someone had asked me a similar question, and it just came to me. I mean, Dr. Hill is on the Mount Rushmore of industry professionals in this business. And I think a lot of folks get opportunities to be ADs in different situations. I'm not so sure mine wasn't the very best it possibly could be, because you hit it right on the head. This was not a broken institution. It was a department that was really on the rise in a lot of different ways. And it was, kind of nice to walk in and be surrounded by so many great professionals that were here. Look at our football coach, at that time, I think going into his 12th year and very stable, and you could tell it was growing, and then across the whole department. But like you say, change is inevitable in anything, and some other folks retired in that first year, and we were able to recruit some people in to blend with an incredible staff here, and really kind of build upon everything that Dr. Hill did. I mean, he is the one that, through his persistence and drive and unbelievable success, got us from the Mountain West to the Pac-12, and he'll forever be indebted to, or we're indebted to him forever for that. So very honored, and he still lives here. You get to see him at all events, and it's always great to see him.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned the move to the Pac-12, and let's talk about football for just a second. Kyle has been there for quite some time now, and had unbelievable success when you're in the Mountain West, and really for jumping leagues and coming into the Pac-12 had maintained that success, but now has sort of taken it to a new level in the league by having the back-to-back championships. And I know when Utah gets the chance to go to the first Rose Bowl last year, what a big deal that was for your university, and then to follow it up again. And I saw the overhead shot from the blimps or drones or whatever it is they take overhead shots from now, and certainly there was a sea of red in the stadium there at the game. Let's just talk a little bit about Kyle and what you think makes him why he's had the sustained success that he's been able to have there as well.
Yeah, just a real authentic leader, very, very consistent, not only, day to day, but hour to hour in his expectations. And he holds himself accountable. He holds his staff accountable, and certainly holds our students accountable. But when you have somebody who is authentic and loves the student athletes that he recruits in, and is consistent with them and the way he manages the program, I think it allows students to thrive. And again, he, like anybody, is very open to say he had to learn along the way. I mean, he had his rough moments, particularly at times, and Dr. Hill stuck with him, and invested in him because he believed in him. And so, to watch all of that come together, to be in 4 league championship games in the last 5 years, the only one we weren't was in the COVID year. It's not surprising to those that are on the inside here because of the kind of students we recruit, the kind of consistency he provides in his leadership. But just an outstanding man, better man than he is coach, and that's saying something.
Yeah, great history there, great run. So your first coach you hired was in the sport of skiing. I told you I want to talk a little bit about a couple of sports we don't talk as much about. You have a lot of conversations about football and men's basketball, but there are so many universities across the country that excel in certain sports, and in particular, Utah's had a long history of success in gymnastics, and I want to talk about that in just a second. But as I alluded to, your first hire was actually in the sport of skiing, and you guys have gone on to win 3 national championships in skiing since that hire. How does one recruit a skiing coach, number one, when that's not in the traditional scope of what a lot of search firms are helping with, and there aren't a ton of ski programs around the country. So how'd you go about recruiting your coach? And then talk about, I mean, you guys there with Park City and the other resorts around the Salt Lake City area. I'm sure that's a great competitive advantage. How do you guys? In skiing? Is there a home course, so to speak? And how does your team go about their practice philosophy around being successful at a high level in that sport?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate having the chance to brag about our skiing program. I'll tell you a quick funny story. When I was hired, of course, I was at University of South Florida, and there was about a 2 to 2.5 week gap between leaving Tampa and coming to Salt Lake. But there's never really a gap, as all our colleagues know. And we had a change. Chris had made a change in skiing, but they hadn't hired a coach yet. So I have fond memories of my deck in Tampa in the 98-degree weather, trying to recruit a ski coach. That was new for me. But Frederick came to us from the University of New Mexico, where they were moving on from the program, so the timing was perfect. He had been a very successful coach, and so we were able to recruit him in. I think the overall success of the program, I believe 14 or 15 national championships here, really kind of is like when it all comes together in other sports. We have an incredible donor support for our skiing program led by the Eccles family. We have a ski house that's right near where my office is, where our skiers operate out of. You can wax your skis, do all the equipment things that you could imagine. And we have a great partnership with our friends up the hill at Park City. We also have a great partnership with US Ski Team. Matter of fact, we are working in a new facility up there to have a mountain for our guys and gals to practice in. So great program. That we were the leading university to provide athletes in the Winter Olympics for anyone, multiple teams, Team USA, Canada, et cetera, et cetera. So very proud of that program, and one that we continue to really believe it can win many as we look into the future years.
Yeah, Mark, how do you compete from a conference perspective in skiing?
Yeah, so we're in the RMSA Ski Association, so it has multiple teams in there. It's a really interesting sport, Mike, in that we have so many of our students that are international competitors that they actually have to fly home, compete for their country, come back. The Zoom classes have really helped them kind of get through it a little easier than pre-pandemic. But the one rule is when we compete as a Ute team, particularly as we head toward the national championship, everyone has to be here to go. It's definitely different in the way that it operates, but similar when they all come together. And like any individual sport, they love to compete as a team.
Yeah. So Pac-12 has had a history of success in gymnastics for a long time. Certainly now you're seeing, in recent years, you've seen a greater investment in the sport of gymnastics by the Southeastern Conference and now the Atlantic Coast Conference. So there are more players in that sport, but you guys have continued to hold fast to an elite level of competition there in Salt Lake. The commitment, I'm assuming, on that sport was made early. Do you still have the same sort of dynamic fan attendance, and what are you seeing with your gymnastics program right now?
Yeah, really proud of everything this program has accomplished. We owe everything to Greg Marsden, who started the program many years ago. His wife Megan co-coached forever. They both have retired now. Tom Farden, who they trained to be ready, has taken over the program. We have been to the national championship last day 44 straight years. competing multiple national championships. And to your point, our friends in the South decided to really invest in this sport some decade plus ago, to their credit, and now it is just a incredible atmosphere. Up until last year, LSU caught us last year, but we were the most attended female sport in the NCAA, with close to 13,000 to 14,000 a meet. It is maniacal. They go by the Red Rocks moniker. That's their nickname. Obviously, they're Utes, but they're Red Rocks, and they are big time in this community. And they're just amazing. And as we tape today, we open tonight against LSU, sold out. Going to be one of the biggest events we've had in the Huntsman Center since the pandemic. So it's an incredible program, multiple Olympians on the team, U.S., Canadian, and English Olympians, and just an amazing group to be around.
Wow, that's phenomenal, man. I haven't had a lot of conversations with athletic directors over the course of now 60 some episodes about academics. But, as I do my research, one of the things that stood out to me was the GPA that your department has held over the last 3 or 4 years, hovering somewhere between 3.4, 3.6 as a department. I think that says a lot about your institution. I think it says a lot. It has to say a lot about your support structure. It has to say a lot about the kinds of student athletes that you're recruiting. You've been around the block. You've worked at a number of institutions. What do you owe that academic success to beyond what I've just alluded to?
Well, you hit it on the head, right? We have coaches who are recruiting and student athletes who care about doing the right stuff in the classroom as well as in competition. Again, I go back to Dr. Hill, his leadership. I think he knew well, we've talked about this, he and I, that when we got into the Pac-12, competition was going to raise big time. In essence, it was almost going to be like a new job for many of our coaches, and getting those kind of athletes. Now, at the same time, he had to build up that academic and service team and all of that. And so we've gone 30 plus semesters now, well over 3.0, and we're second at Stanford in graduation rate at about 94% too, in GSR. So a lot of that stuff comes together in that once you start getting into a rhythm of that, the other students, the freshmen, come in and realize they got to be like that. And the other thing I think we've really done the last few years in particular is we really reinvested into our mental health team. We've got 5 full-time mental health psychologists on staff. And I really look at that group as another key reason. We can get into the pandemic and how they guided everyone through that. And I think all of that led to the success that you mentioned early these last 2 years. There's a lot of ingredients that went into that. But our students know it's really important. You can't compete here if you're not going to compete in the classroom. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah. So if you look back at your history, you've been a very successful fundraiser for a long time. Obviously, you had an extensive experience in the external side of things at Arizona. Great success at UCLA. I know you were involved in a Pauley renovation there that was $130 some odd million, and were involved in the Rose Bowl renovation that was $200 million. As athletic director at South Florida, obviously a number of initiatives that have continued to set that program on the right kind of trajectory. Following Doug, and now with Michael coming in behind you, and then many projects that you have done there since you've been back at Utah, including the Garf Family Red Zone. So I'd love for you just to comment on your experience in fundraising, development, what you found as the success tools, how you try to go about your business, because I do think this, Mark, and granted, this is biased, right? Because I was in development as well. When you review who should be in a chair, there's been probably in some ways too much emphasis placed on the fact that, hey, you need to be able to fundraise. I do think that's an important part of it, a very important part of it. And Ross Bjork, in one of these interviews, said he felt like you either need to have an AD need to either have some significant development and external presence, or they needed to understand the law, right? How much time do you commit to development in your work now, knowing that you have myriad responsibilities that are, across all kinds of aspects of the role?
Well, certainly it's a big part of the role here, developing, cultivating, and these relationships are so important. And we talk about our success again. We've really increased our fundraising because so many great people in the community have stepped up for us. But for me, fundraising, there's really 2 things that come to mind. When I worked for Dick Tomey, one of my mentors at Arizona. He was a football coach, and it wasn't really recruiting coordinators there. And he put me in that role as a GA, and I learned quickly how organized you had to be with relationship development and all those kind of things, and tracking those relationships, trying to get those young men to say yes at some point and not being offended if they say no, right? Just keep moving on. And then when I worked with Mr. Livengood, and he taught me a lot of things about fundraising once I got out of that coaching football staff area. And then he brought in this feller named Chris Delcani, who showed up one day, and he asked me to partner with him. And that was 2 years of just absolute lunacy and probably the funnest time in my career. But what Chris taught me, besides just being, one of the hardest working people I've ever been around, is not to overthink it, right? These are people, they're passionate. Talk to them, learn from them, have fun with them. I remember him poking fun at every CEO, big time person you can imagine. And so watching that, so that the diligence and the organization, along with just Chris, remind me all the time, it's about relationships. So I really enjoy it. I sometimes find myself, 2 or 3 days of just doing straight fundraising relationships. Then you go away from it a little bit, back and forth. But it's certainly, resource development is really critical in what we do. And, but it's something that I'm real fortunate that I love to do.
Yeah, so you guys were fortunate enough to close what was the largest gift in your history with the Garf family a few years ago, and that entailed closing in your end zone. I was thinking about that particular. Certainly, that was for the support of the football program in general, but in particular as it related to the expansion of your stadium and the closing of the end zone. You guys have had, I think, now a pretty long run at sellouts, right? And so
Correct.
with the dynamics of changing fan behavior, I still think there's something to be said about being present and in a live football environment. But I think some schools are starting to evaluate what's the tipping point of how many seats versus too many seats or not enough seats. And you guys obviously added seats. You're now at 52,000, if I remember correctly. Did that was that? How did you evaluate the fact that you had a hard demand for your ticket, but yet you also felt like you need to continue to invest in the fans and expand? Talk to me a little bit about the dynamic of considering what's the right amount to expand by and what you were trying to accomplish with your end zone project.
Yeah, it was probably I don't know if it was the hardest, but I felt like the most strategic decision we had to make. And luckily, we had the great folks from CSL that had already been hired by Chris and had done a comprehensive study on quantity and, of course, pricing of whatever product we were going to make decisions on. And I'll be candid, I think the CSL study said we could probably push it to 60 and make things work. We had the ability to build the end zone that big. But, we were coming off, like you said, I think at that time, 7 or 8 years of sellouts at 47, a scarcity of ticket, which is something Chris Delcana and I used to always talk about as the best thing you can have in this business, and a maniacal atmosphere. So we settled in on that 51, right? We felt like that took us over 50. That was a number that I think we really wanted us to be. I wanted us to be. So once we made that decision, we just got off, with designing all the product and working with Populous and Legends, who we also brought in to help sell the product. But we now already have a waiting list again, right? But not what it was in terms of 5,000, but we're back to about 2,000. So 11 straight years now of sellouts. The end zone sold out, built it during the pandemic, sold it during the pandemic. Legends did an incredible job, as did a lot of folks on my team, Scott Cole, who led that project for us. So just an amazing testament to the success of the football team, but also to people that stepped up. The Garf family, Garf Automotive, one of the largest private auto dealerships in the country, great people. And they saw the vision. They saw how this would not only help football, but it would also help our whole department by the additional revenue coming back to support scholarship and services. So it was one of those, everything came together, but I'm glad we launched it when we did, because we got our steel in just in time, and we were able to get it done late in construction, a local firm here, right before everything shut down.
Well, your stadium's a great story from starting with the momentum coming out of the Olympics in Salt Lake City and what was done during that time for the opening and closing ceremonies, and then your private fundraising, which we just alluded to, your fan support for so long, the success that Kyle's had. Candidly, though I've not been to a game there, I've been in the stadium a couple of times, right? The tight nature to the field, I think, has got to be a fan advantage. So it's a pretty cool scene for sure. I want to shift to the Pac-12 conversation, because I do want to focus on this for a few minutes with our remaining time. there are a lot of directions we could go with this, but let's start off the top with I hesitate to call George the new commissioner because now he's been in the chair for a little bit, but I know that you're a fan, and I would be interested to hear your perspective on a guy who came in from out of the industry, has inherited some interesting conversations really throughout his entire tenure, but the media, the multimedia rights question, the question of departure of schools, all those sorts of things. Let's talk about George first and what you think has made him successful early, and why you like working with him.
Yeah, well, yeah, George came in, and I think he did a brilliant thing the day he was hired. The ADs were kept out of that. We were certainly in the front part of the process talking about profile, but once they got to work, our presidents and chancellors obviously kept everything quiet. So when he was announced, I was like everybody else. I recognized the name because he had worked at MGM, and we had done deals with them to move the men's basketball tournament there, and some of the football conversations we were having to move there. So I knew of the name. I'd met him, but that afternoon he called all of us. He called us all individually, had a great conversation. That really set the tone. Very transparent in his approach. I remember that first we all went to Vegas and met him actually before he started on July 1, and he wanted to listen and learn, right? Kind of admitting to all of us, hey, I'm not a practitioner. You guys have been in this business, so help me as we go through this. And of course, NIL was first day and all those things and everything you have alluded to. But I think what he's done a really good job of is keeping us informed. Now, it's been hard. I mean, June 30 last year was a gut punch for everybody. When we found out about SC and UCLA moving on, he immediately got us together. And as we go through all the way up until today, has been very transparent as we try to close this television deal, which is so critical. But appreciate the fact that leaders that are willing to listen, leaders that are willing to take advice and counsel from others, and make decisions. And I think he's done a great job.
Yeah, by all measures that I can see from the outside looking in, I think that's the case. Look, this certainly there was the SC UCLA move within your league. There've been other moves across other leagues across the country. I'm curious. I don't think I'm overstepping here by asking this question. You'll tell me if I am. Uh, every AD that sits in your chair in your league or in other leagues, when these things start happening and their moves, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say how you navigate what inevitably becomes your own paranoia around it, and then focusing in on those that remain and understanding that you've got really good people in the league, you've got great institutions in the league, and deciding how do you join arms and lock arms and make sure that you aren't shy about saying that you have that, but at the same time also being aware enough to know that ultimately your job is to protect the University of Utah's interests. Now, there's a lot in that question, right? But I guess I'm really asking you to sort of peel back the curtain a little bit and maybe give us some thoughts on how you've navigated these last 12 or so months with the announcement that came.
Yeah, well, Mike, that you're obviously someone who's been in this chair, and I think you just articulated exactly the challenge. I think there is a duality in all of this, right? The Pac-12 conference is a pride conference, 100 plus years with great success in so many different ways. I don't need to get into all of that, but you do feel a certain obligation to keep this conference moving forward. Some of it's personal. I went to a school in this conference. I've worked in multiple schools in this conference, and all of that. While at the same time you're the athletic director at the University of Utah, and you have to make sure that you balance those things accordingly. The good news, where the president and I are, as are many in my conference and colleagues, is that those two can be synchronous. You can move the conference forward and also move your school forward. So it's been a multiple step journey. I think probably 10 years from now I'll have more chance to really reflect. I remember July probably being as down as I've been, and I try not to get down in this job because there's so many ups and downs. You just go. Dan Guerrero taught me that when we worked together, but that was July was tough, and who was staying, who was going, who was going to get a dance card, who wasn't, trying to figure everything out. New commissioner, but we knew he could do it. All these kind of things were going on, but I think the good news is things have really settled in. I think our conference had an unbelievable fall with 6 teams in the top 25 at the end of the year. We didn't get into the CFP. We just kind of eat our own a little bit. It's kind of what we do. But we had such great teams this year. And I think it's reminded all of us who we are and who we can be. And I think it's reminding our media partners who we can be as we finish this up. But you know, it's I guess the other thing I really learned is you just can't take this stuff personally. I think I went through taking it personally with Mike and Martin. I was upset with them, and I realized sometime like in the first part of August, you know, those guys are doing what they think is best, and you have to
Right.
respect our colleagues. And so that's, you know, I'm over that. We're moving forward together. I mean, it's you know, it's kind of fun. We kick them out of meetings. You know, we're like, hey guys, and then we kick them out, and then they come back and we kick them out. So we're in our rhythm, just as other conferences have had to do the last couple of years. But we're all moving forward, looking forward to some stability with this new deal. I think it will be really great for all of us. And I do believe the 10 of us are going to march forward. And then we'll take a look at expansion. That's still something I think our chancellors have asked us to do. But if we stay at 10, then let's get after it. That's kind of the way I view it.
Well, the good news is, as we alluded to off the top here, Utah is performing at one of the highest levels you've ever performed at across the board in all your sports, and so you've proven that something good is happening at your place, right? And that you guys are headed in the right direction, and I'm sure you will continue to do that. Let's close out with, you referred to Dick Tomey as being one of your mentors. I've seen publicly where you've basically pointed to Dick and to Dan Guerrero as two of your mentors. Talk a little bit about the concept of mentoring is an interesting thing. I think we need mentors. And I had a discussion with Patty Phillips at one time on one of these podcasts where we talked about, does mentoring happen through the request to mentor, or the request to serve, the idea that you would serve as someone mentor, or does it happen organically, right? And I can tell you, some folks who have had an instrumental part in my career, first of all, those two guys specifically, if you wouldn't mind, talk to that. And secondly, your view of the concept of mentoring and how that plays out.
Yeah. Well, let's just start with Coach Tomey, who we lost a few years ago. But he, you know, being around him as a student at Arizona, and then working for him and having a personal relationship with his son too along the way, one of my best friends in this big world of college football in the late 80s. And you know, he just made it small. He made the family atmosphere, and I could see the way he would hug his young men, and that was something new for me to see that. And showing that love and compassion and care can actually lead to incredible results, rather than maybe what I thought, oh, you got to be around a screamer. You know, I don't know. It's just kind of what you see on TV a lot. And then the way he treated his staff, you know, worked harder than everybody else. He set the foundation for really everything who I am professionally and a lot personally. And then as I got moved up in the business and worked around, I got the opportunity to work with Dan. And you know, Dan, UCLA is a hard place. I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen at UCLA. It just always does. And to watch him deal with crisis and to watch him move the organization forward, but again, you know, just so much compassion and care, and one of the best listeners I've ever been around. He would have a way to ask questions, right? That was just unique and elite. And I've tried to learn a lot from that. But again, the common thread with those two is just care about your people, treat them as great as you can, and you know, go from there. I think was when it relates to mentors, I'm more on the organic side. You know, I think that, you know, those two men were just people I was fortunate to be around, work for, and organically it grew. That being said, I've had student athletes since I've been an AD come by just to meet with me, and that was maybe not some of the organic way, but has developed into that. You know, I still have a lot of students at South Florida. They check in with me, answering questions, and of course, same here now that I've been here for 5 years. So I think however you get there, but you got to have one. You know, I call Dan a lot on a lot of different things. I still have Dick Tomey in my cell phone, and when it gets really thick, I'll just, you know, just call it. It's just something that is soothing to me. But these folks are critical, and I know part of my obligation as I get a little older here is to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to you know, pay it forward, so to speak, to folks that are either working for me or other relationship student athletes. I just think it's critical. And the last thing I'll say on this, Mike, is we need really strong people in this industry. And I know Greg Byrne, when he was running NACTA, you know, really encouraging all of us to get back to NACTA. The ADs had slipped out and all those other things. But he's right. We have got to, as leaders, really be mentoring, particularly the young people in our departments, those 20, 30-year-olds, because we need solid people. great opportunities, but great challenges ahead. But we have got to bring on young people and help them as they move forward.
Yeah, and I'd say this. I think that one of the issues that we're facing right now is there was a time when we were all willing to work for free T-shirts and a warm hot dog, and
Yep,
times have changed, and folks who are a little bit younger, tend to history shows that they move from job to job, and you can't just assume that everybody wants to work in college athletics for what sometimes at the entry level in particular are not huge salaries, and so the mentoring part of this, the pouring in as an AD who has been around is significant, and leadership development is significant. And look, there are plenty of capable young people out there today who can have an impact on this, and we need to not forget that. And I think part
yep,
of it is also giving them the chance to succeed and listen, right? Because times are different, and you and I have our view on the world related to our age, our time, and our time, your time is it's not your horizon is probably not 25 years, right? It's a shorter horizon. So
that's right.
how do you do that in the right way? I think is going to be really critical. This is still, despite all the different puts and takes and things that have been said about college athletics over the last, let's call it 24 to 36 months. Um, it's still a great place to work. You have the opportunity to have an impact on young people's lives, and it's folks like you that are going to continue to make it that way. So I don't know how you're. Okay, I said I was going to end on the question about mentors. Just really quickly, how are you guys trying to recruit younger staff members? Do you see, like, at any given time at Learfield, we're having turnover, right? And it's mainly
Sure.
coming in our younger, it's in our younger group of folks. How are you guys addressing that? Are you seeing that in your world at Utah?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly post pandemic, and kind of what I said earlier about my LA colleagues. At first I was taking some of this stuff personally. We were bringing we were bringing young people in, particularly in the external area. Although I don't want to pick on that area, but they were moving forward. I'm like, what's going on? It's a great place. We're winning games here. We got all this stuff going on. And then I realized, can't take it personally. You got to, just like with coaches with transfers, you got to really look inward and say, okay, what are we doing? Culture, look in the mirror, and do the best we can. But the other thing, and it sounds cliche, but deep bench, we talk a lot to our department heads, particularly in the marketing, communication, development, new media space. Develop a bench, really spend time every week developing a bench, because there's some incredible people out there. But you're right, the days of working 7 days a week and all that, it's like walking 10 miles in the snow, our parents and all that kind of stuff. When we laughed at that, they laugh at us now on that. So we got to just listen to them, what's important to them. I'll tell you, the one thing that we really found here is I've this whole hour thing. We got to give these kids Mondays and Tuesdays off if they're working all weekend. Like, we have to set the standard. Like, you guys don't have to come in on Monday and Tuesday. I mean, that sounds a little silly, but we've actually set some of those parameters up here to try to give them some balance. The whole thing, some of them are still on Zoom. I want them all in. I am
Yeah.
that guy, but I've also learned, hey, some of them can be. So anyway, trying to do everything we can to keep the good ones here, but also know that it's going to happen. Have a streamlined HR operation, have a bench, and get after it. At the end of the day, the university is what matters, and we'll recruit great people in here.
Uh, much as I expected, spot on. Hey, look, I know you've got a ton going on, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken this 30 plus minutes out of your day to visit with me and to visit with us and the folks that are listening to this. Um, you're a special guy and doing a great job at Utah. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Mike, thank you, and really appreciate your team here at Learfield. Appreciate your leadership, and got a great team here, always hitting their full numbers here, and just it's fun to have them so integrated into our whole department. So appreciate you and appreciate Learfield. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I know you'll tell us that we need to get better at what we're doing along the way. And
That's
we're
that's
recording
for
on
off the podcast. We'll talk later.
we're recording on January 6th. Mark did refer to a big meet tonight on campus against LSU and gymnastics. Wishing you well on that. This has been From the Chair. We broadcast every Wednesday. You can also go back in the archives and look at the other 60 or so that have been recorded. You can watch the podcast on YouTube or listen to it across all audio platforms. We hope you'll join this week and every week, and we'll see you next time.